Well, hey folks, welcome back to another video with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today is the day of days. Not really, but that sounded cool, right? Well, today I'm going to be taking you through a comparison of ye old coffin box Twilight Imperium 3 and ye new hotness Twilight Imperium 4. And so I really struggled with how I was going to do this because these games are so massive in concept and epic in scale that to compare every little detail will be here for a couple hours. So I'm going to take a more generalistic approach and compare the ways that the two games differ the most, in my opinion. So the people who are familiar with Twilight Imperium 3 will have an idea of the changes that have been made to TI4. And if anybody else that's looking to get into it, I don't know how that's going to help you because, quite frankly, I really do think on the offset that if you're getting into Twilight Imperium, this is probably your best bet because it is the refined version of this. This is great, don't get me wrong. Twilight Imperium 3 is what really solidified this game in my top games of all time list. This one, however, improves upon this great system. So there is that. Now, so what we're going to do is just, there's a whole lot of little small changes. So with all that being said, I know that was clear as mud, but we're going to take a generalistic comparison of these two. So let's get down to the table and get that taken care of. The box is definitely shorter, but it is slightly taller. I would say maybe 2 or 3 inches, maybe just 2 inches taller than the Twilight Imperium 3 box. So it's a little bit deeper, but it's shorter, whereas the Twilight Imperium 3rd edition is more shallow, but it's a little bit longer. So while this looks smaller, I think you're probably going to have a comparable amount of space within the box to deal with. But with that having been said, let's go ahead and open the boxes, and that's where you will find one of our first differences. And so voila, we have the boxes opened. In the Twilight Imperium 3 box, you'll notice that everything is snugly wrapped in plastic, except for the tiles and so forth. But you'll notice that there is absolutely no insert. If you'll remember, this is one of those games that had that, trench insert that was really one of those things that I really got tired with. So that's that. There's absolutely no insert for Twilight Imperium 3. However, there is an insert for Twilight Imperium 4. Now, the insert, of course, doesn't hold absolutely everything the way I want it to be differentiated. So I have things in plastic bags that are sitting on top of everything. There's plenty of room for these cards in the insert. I just don't like where they're designed to be put, so I did away with them. But having said that, this insert is light years better than anything Twilight Imperium-esque has been put out by Fantasy Flight. They really did a good job stepping away from the trench that worked well for shipping and probably manufacturing and all that kind of stuff, but they went a little bit on the extra mile here, so I got to give them kudos for that because I have given them a lot of grief for the trenches in the past. So I will say that this is probably one of the coolest things on the onset that I like about Twilight Imperium 4. Okay, so one of the first differences I wanted to show you is the difference in the player sheets and how much more practical and useful the new ones are to the old ones. Now, these are useful. It has all of your stats for all of your different kinds of ships. It has the game round. It has, the different phases for all of the different things that go on within the course of a game round. So that's all well and good. Gives you your starting technology, starting units, special abilities for the race, all that good stuff. The cool thing is that that is all here as well, with the one caveat being that on the back side is where you have your starting technologies, your starting units, and all of that kind of stuff over here. And then, of course, it also has a little brief synopsis or history to the race, but it's very similar to what was already here. It's just that the starting units and everything like that is on the other side of this card, whereas it's on the back of this one. The first thing here is that you'll see that there's a difference between trade goods and commodities, and we'll get to talking about that a little bit later on, possibly. But generally speaking, your race generates these commodities that are not any good to you unless you trade them to a neighbor. And at that point, when you receive someone else's commodities, they'll turn into trade goods for you, and you'll be able to use them just like you're able to use the old trade goods. But there's that trading aspect that was not really here. It kind of was, but it's much more prevalent in the new version. That's a cool thing. Another thing is that all of these things here have pictures of the model that they are representing. Here, you only have the name and all of the stats. Useful, but this is much more useful because not only do you have all of the stats that are necessary for all of those things, you also have a picture showing you what a fighter looks like. It shows you what an advanced carrier looks like. Well, a carrier, actually. This is specific for Federation of Sol. Then you have the Ghosts of Crews. So there you have those. Now, you may have been wondering, where are the tactic and strategy and fleet spaces on the new boards? Well, it's because these are separated from the regular board, and they are such so that they can be on either side of the board. If you have a right-hand dominated player, you can put it on the right hand. Left hand, you can put it over here, or if it's a spacing issue, whatever it might be. But everything is on here that was on the other player sheet. You have the types of actions that are listed here. The tactical action are all explained. Then you also have the status phase that happens after the action phases, and so forth. So the only thing that I didn't like about this one is that the political phase, the agenda phase rather is what it's called, that happens after the status phase, once Mechatol Rex has been taken over, isn't on here. And I kind of think the reason why they left it off is because there is a part of the game that you're not actually doing that phase. It is not until the planet of Mechatol Rex has been taken over does that begin to take effect. So I understand that. But place for your trade goods, strategy pool, fleet pool, tactic pool, and that is all there. It also gives a listing of all of the different anomalies that are on the board or could be on the board, so that can be a quick reference for you as well. So these are a cool addition. Again, it just kind of refines, makes things a little bit easier. And so here I have just a comparison of the models that come in TI3 and TI4. On the right-hand side, you have in the darker green TI3, and then the lighter green is TI4, and then of course on the bottom over here. But it gives you just a general idea of the difference, the step up in quality that you have. Now, Vernon in our last game on Saturday said that he felt that the newer models were a little bit chintzier. Now that I have them side by side, the models, the sculpts are just out of this world better than the old ones. And you know, that's pretty weird because I really thought that these were pretty neat looking models, but when you see the difference in the two, I mean, let me see if I can get it a little bit further up close for you and just see the difference between these two and how much better the newer models are from the older models. I mean, these are the destroyers, and you can just see the difference between the two. This is lighter. These are a little bit more dense, I guess you could say. This is a different kind of plastic, but it is definitely better in almost every way, shape, and form. The carriers here, the new one, of course, on that side, and then the old one. So they are just really nicer models all across the board. The cruisers are here, and again, you know, just more of the same. You can just really see the difference in quality that's here. The dreadnoughts are probably the ones that look the most similar in my opinion, but they are slightly bigger. So you can see that here with that size comparison. They are slightly bigger, but they basically saved the same shape. But again, the detailing, the amount of just precision on this mold is so much better than this one. This was good for its day, don't get me wrong, but these are just so much better. And then the flagships. Now, the flagships were part of an expansion for TI3, but they do come in the base game for TI4. And so you see the difference in the flagships here. Almost definitely a completely different design. These look a lot more alien, I guess you could say, than these do. These are just a little bit more sleek. I like these a lot better. I mean, I liked these, don't get me wrong again, but these are just so much better. The, I almost called them Death Stars. Goodness gracious. The War Suns here are, again, this just looks like basically an egg that's kind of sticking up out of the ground and hollow on the inside. And they went the extra step and made it twice as dangerous for you to step on for the new War Suns. These are two pieces that pop apart and then they get put back together pretty easily with you just lining up that little semicircle there. But again, these are light years better than the old stuff. And then you have your ground forces. Again, they stayed with the basic flag, but I think you can see the difference in the two pretty easily. This is a little bit more wavy, I guess you could say. This is going to be a lot easier to paint if you are so inclined, and they'll look a whole lot better. And then the PDSs here, you actually looks like a cannon facing skyward rather than just some kind of thing. I don't know. Oh yeah, I guess I can see there's a little turret there, but again, it's much more pronounced on the new ones, and I like them a lot better. And then of course the space docks. I can't remember if I showed these to you, so I'm going to do it again. The space dock models, again, very similar, very, very similar, but there's just a crispness to the new models that the old ones just did not have. So better by far, in my opinion. Now this is going to be, well, this is where I thought there was going to be a disparagence between TI3 and TI4. These are the tiles that come in the base game minus the 10 race planets, starting home planets for each of the races that come in TI3. And these are all the tiles that come in TI4. It seems like there's less, but there actually isn't. There's the same number of tiles. You have, I think, fewer blank tiles in this one, though. You may be remembering, however, all of the tiles that came in the expansions. And so these we're not going to talk about because these were expansion tiles. Maybe they're going to have expansions for 4th edition. I don't know yet, but we are talking about Fantasy Flight. So you throw these out and there is actually a very comparable number of planet tiles in TI4 as compared to TI3. Now, very just, quick and dirty comparison of the two art styles. They're very similar, but this has, that little, I don't know, like a coordinate circle or something like that on the outside of it. Makes it look a little bit cooler, I guess. Now you'll see that the different colors, the colors have changed on the places, though. The one is resources, the yellow outline, and the blue outline is for influence or political votes and that type of thing. So that's a difference in the different planet tiles. Now you'll also see that each of the planets have these little symbols, and they are different kinds of planets. This is an industrial planet. This is a hazardous planet, and then there's also a blue, which I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it really doesn't have any specific kind of connotation, except that some action cards are going to reference these different kinds of planet, different things that you can do on those different kinds of planets. And so that's the only reason that there is a differentiation. Now you'll see that they also do have the technology discounts that are on this one as well. However, they're used slightly different. Whenever you had in TI3, whenever you had a technology discount, it was actually like a -1 resource. Whenever you were building, for example, Vethet 2 here, whenever you're building a red technology, you get a -1 to the cost of that. Well, because they've done the they've pretty much done away with the tech tree, and I'll talk about this next, but every time you have a planet that has this, you can exhaust that planet when you're building a technology of that color to count as one of the requirements or prerequisites to build that new technology. So again, I'll talk about that next, but that's what they have here. They're not a discount on the price. They are giving you a prerequisite that you might not have in order to build that new technology. So that's what these new planets look like. The hazardous planets all have a red back on them. All of the rest of them have a blue back, so that helps you with setup if you want to do it randomly, that type of thing. The gravity well, the nebula, the supernova, the asteroid fields, and then of course open space here as well. So there is that. The new the new home planets for each of the races are green on the back. They don't have a picture of the Trader Lions like the ones in TI3 did, and they also have a symbol for that faction here on the front, which is also pretty cool. So that's awesome as well. Now, one thing I wanted to point out to you, and this is cool because it helps with setup. If you wanted to do, some of the pre-set maps in the book, they each have a number from 1 to 51. And that's where you have maps that can be set up very easily. They just tell you what number tile to put in what space, and you're good to go. So again, that helps with the expedited setup, or the setting up a board that is already pre-made for you, so you don't have to take that extra 20 to 30 minutes to set up the board randomly per player. Now, I promised you I'd talk about the tech tree next, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. These are the technology cards that you're going to be getting that you use to further your technology in the game. Now, I'm also showing the Necrovias player board because it actually coincides with the technology cards. So, for example, when you build XRD transporters, down here it has the requirements, and as long as you have those or that number of blue technologies already built in your technology pool, then you can go ahead and build XRD transporters, which upgrades your carriers. Now, instead of having this off to the side of the board somewhere so that you have to keep track of it, you simply put it on top of your carrier position, so that now when you look at your carriers, you no longer have carrier 1, you have carrier 2, and these are the new stats. So that's a really cool addition, I think, or a refinement to the technology tree. The technology tree was so cumbersome. It was so difficult for new people to grab hold of. This is a much more streamlined version of the same thing, so that's really cool. So if you want to upgrade your destroyers, you just have to have 2 red technologies, or have a planet have one red technology already built, and then have a planet that provides you with another red technology, and then you can just use that red planet, flip it over, exhaust it, and then you'll have your two things. You pay the amount that is required, and you're good to go. So this is a much better thing. You, of course, have some technologies that don't have any prerequisites. They just give you things. So when you pay the cost, you can automatically put, for example, anti-mass deflectors, and it gives you a blue technology that you can then use for something else, like a gravity drive. So it costs one. You've already got it with anti-mass deflectors. Now it has two. Now you can build your carrier, and so forth and so on. It's really a more simplified system for the technology phase. Or the technology strategy phase. So it's much better in my opinion. I love the fact that you're putting these on here so you don't have to keep track of all the different technologies that are affecting your different ships. A much better system. Probably, I think, one of the best changes from Twilight Imperium 4. Now, another cool thing that TI4 does is it takes this mess, in my opinion. These are the strategy cards that came in the base game, and then these are the two expansions that came out with it. So it takes all of this mess and puts it into this. So rather than go through all of these one by one, comparing them to these, I'm just going to show you what these new ones do. And how doing that is really, really cool. So first of all, the leadership ability, the number one, it gives you, first of all, you gain 3 command tokens, and then you can spend any amount of influence to gain 1 command token for every 3 influence spent. All right, so not only do you get to do that, then you can spend any amount of influence to get 1 command token for every 3 spent. So here, the secondary ability is you can spend any amount of influence to gain 1 command token for every 3. You don't have to use a strategy token in order to do this for secondary ability. I really like that. Plus, I like the fact that it just gives you all of this stuff, and it gives you a little bit more staying power, so to speak, with that leadership thing. And you're also going to be going first during the round. Diplomacy here. Diplomacy says choose one system other than Mechatol Rex, and that contains a planet that you control. Each other player places a command token from his reinforcements in the chosen system. Then you can ready each exhausted planet you control in that system. That's a change. So that's really cool. Secondary ability is spend 1 token from your strategy pool to ready up to 2 exhausted planets. So that's cool as well. You can use planets, exhaust them, and then if somebody gets the diplomacy, you can spend a token from your strategy pool to refresh up to 2 exhausted planets. Really cool. The politics one is where you are, first of all, you choose another player to be the new speaker. Then you draw 2 action cards. Then you can look at 2 of the top cards of the agenda deck, and you place each card on either the top or the bottom of the deck in any order. And then those, so you're able to manipulate the agenda phase when it actually starts happening after somebody takes over Mechatol Rex. The secondary ability here is you can spend 1 strategy token to draw 2 action cards. So that's cool too. The action cards, we're probably not going to go over all of them, but they have a lot of action cards in them where you're able to affect, manipulate, or otherwise change some of the things or gain a benefit from some of the votes that happen in the agenda phase. So that's why there's a connection between the politics strategy card and drawing action cards. Then you also have construction. This is one of the coolest ones, I think. You no longer have to pay for space docks or for PDSs anymore, because if you take the construction strategy card, you place 1 PDS or space dock on a planet that you control. Just boom, there it is. Then you can also place a PDS on a planet that you control. So if you take the construction strategy card, you'll be able to place either 2 PDSs or a space dock and a PDS on planets that you control. And of course, it's just 1 and 1. It's not all of your planets or anything like crazy like that. The secondary ability is you can place one token from your strategy pool in any system. Then you can place either one space dock or one PDS on a planet you control in that system. So again, this is just a really cool thing that it takes away kind of the overload that you maybe felt with TI3 with having so many different things that you had to purchase. This alleviates part of that. The trade strategy card, you gain 3 trade goods, which is cool because everybody starts with commodities, which you replenish commodities. And everybody has a certain number of commodities that is your max. And so getting 3 trade goods is really cool. Choose any number of other players. Those players use the secondary ability without having to spend a command token. So there's a little bit of a knife in your back, maybe. It depends on the situation. But the secondary ability is simply you're replenishing commodities, but you have to pay a strategy token to do so if you were not chosen by the person who's trading. So that's pretty cool. Warfare is slightly different than TI3. Here it says remove one of your command tokens from the game board, then gain 1 command token. So you're going to remove one that you've already placed, and then you're going to gain another one. So it's like you're getting one back from the board that you already placed. And then it says redistribute any number of the command tokens on your command sheet. So Warfare allows you to, in the middle of a round, change your fleet supply, which is really, really cool. Secondary ability, spend 1 token from your strategy pool to use the production ability of one of your space stocks in your home system. So again, you can upgrade your fleet size, your fleet supply size. You can also produce. So that's really cool. The technology card, you research 1 technology for free, and then you spend 6 resources to research another technology. So you get 2 technologies for the price of 6, 1 for free, and then you may get another one for 6. You don't have to do that. Down here, you spend 1 token from your strategy pool and 4 resources to research 1 technology. So again, this is cooler because it's not as hard as a secondary ability. The difference being you have to use one of your strategy tokens. Up here, you don't. So I really like the new technology one as well. Imperial, this is probably the one that has caused the most heartache and heartburn in the other previous editions of Twilight Imperium. This one I think is pretty straightforward. Immediately score 1 public objective if you fulfill its requirements, and then gain 1 victory point if you control Mechatol Rex. Otherwise, you can draw another secret objective. You can have 3 secret objectives at any time, whether they are finished or unfinished. You can only have 3. So if you have 3 that are finished, you pretty much can't have any more secret objectives. The secondary ability here is spend 1 token from your strategy pool to draw 1 secret objective. So that's cool as well. Some of the other differences for TI3, this is the agenda deck that you're going to have. They have laws and directives in the game, and you're going to be voting on these during the agenda phase, which again does not take place until somebody takes over Mechatol Rex, and then it happens after the status phase, not during whenever somebody fires the political strategy card. Now, in order to take over Mechatol Rex, you have to simply fly there and spend 6 influence. Exhaust planets that have a total of 6 influence on them. Then, if you do that, that gets you 1 victory point for having done that, and you keep that. Now, the speaker token, it looks pretty much the same as it did in the other one, so that's not really a difference. You do have the score track here, 10 on one side, and then 14 on the other, so that hasn't changed at all. But what has changed is these public objectives. You actually start with 5 public objectives, and the first 2 are turned over at the beginning of the game. And so there's no weirdness happening. And then every round after the first round, another one is flipped over so that these can be up there all the time, and so forth and so on. So that's a cool little streamlined thing that I think just makes the game go a little bit faster. Then you also have secondary public objectives that are all worth 2 points. And there's also 5 of these dealt below the score track. So these will go above and these will go below, and they stay hidden until the 6th round happens, and then you're going to flip over the first one, and then so forth and so on. So again, I just think these are a lot better. They did a lot to streamline the game that way. You also have these things that are called promissory notes, and these are a carryover from one of the expansions, but they also have race-specific promissory notes as well. And these are things that you can simply give in these different types of transactions. Now, transactions and deals are basically the same thing in Twilight Imperium 4. Transactions are more economic. Deals can be economic, but they can also be, hey, look, I'll vote for you here if you do this. If it is a deal or a transaction that can immediately take place, then they are binding actions. But if it's something that, hey, I'll promise you something in the future, those are not binding. So that's pretty cool. For example, if you were the Necrovirus, you would have this a promissory note where it says at the start of combat, you place this card face up in your play area. While this card is in your play area, the Necro player cannot use his technological singularity faction ability against you. If you activate a system that contains one or more Necro players' units, return this card to the Necro player. So one of the most annoying things in the world as far as Twilight Imperium is concerned is the Necrovirus just stealing technology from you. So that's a pretty cool promissory note. You can say, hey, here's this. As long as you stay out of my areas, I can't steal your technology. There's also ceasefire, where if this is for the player who's using the color black. So it says if the black player activates a system that contains one or more of your units, the black player cannot move units into that active system, then return this card to the black player. So this is where you can stop somebody from invading your thing. Support for the throne, you're basically promising a victory point for them if they do whatever you want them to do. A trade agreement, so whenever the person who's playing the black would replenish his commodities, he gives you all of his commodities, and then you return this card to him. So this is just a way for you to get more commodities than your maximum. Political secret, when an agenda is revealed, the black player cannot vote, play action cards, or use faction abilities until after that agenda has been resolved. So again, these are just promissory notes that can be part of transactions. So that is that. I'm going to save most of my, thoughts on the game, although I did divulge a lot of feelings throughout the course of this comparison. But I hope that gives you a better idea of what's different in 4th edition for Twilight Imperium. I almost said Twilight Imperium 3 because I just got so used to saying that. And really, I had written off the possibility of a TI4. I thought that it was done, but I stand corrected. A couple of different things that I didn't go over. There is a lore compendium that comes in the 4th edition, and then they also have the Learn to Play and the rules reference books that they have become very prolific with as well. So both are written very good. I think that there are a couple of typos between the cards and the rule book, but again, that's I guess that's to be expected. I've only found one to be specific, but again, that's just that. I think the differences between the old and the new are great, and I think that they have definitely done a good job in refining Twilight Imperium 3 to make it an even better game system than it was. So I think I've probably said already too much anyway. Hopefully you've gotten a good idea of what's new in Twilight Imperium 4. Tom and I are going to be putting up our Miami dice of it today as well. So today being when both of these released originally, of course, not anytime in the near future or distant future for that matter. But hey, that is a comparison between Twilight Imperium 3 and Twilight Imperium 4. See you guys on the flip side.